Welcome to training for best practice in SAP Business One. It's Amanda here from marketing, and today I'm joined by Kiran Solanki, our resident SAP Business One expert, to take you through the training today. Handing over to you, Kiran.
Thanks, Amanda. Today's webinar, as Amanda said, is best practice in Business One. What we're going to try and cover in the next sort of 45 minutes or so is looking at the SAP basic navigation and overview training, right? And this is particularly useful for new employees in the business, as well as a refresher for the people who've been using Business One for some time now. So let's have a quick look at the agenda. Essentially, it is, overview and navigation, going how to get around the system. So let's start by looking at the process of logging into SAP. If you are running SAP, you would have on your dashboard, on your desktop, or in the menu system, an icon for SAP Business One. You launch that, and once you've got that in, you're presented with a login screen. What the system does is it remembers the last company you had logged into, so whatever that company may be. And if you just want to log into that, you just put in your username and password, and in you go. If you're wanting to log into a different company, you click on the change company, and then you get a list of companies that are available. And from there, you select the appropriate one, you put in your username and password, and you log in. Now, if you've got single sign-on turned on, then you wouldn't need to enter a username and password. You'd have this option to log in with the current domain user. So this works with Windows Active Directory. If that's been set up, then you essentially would have the list of companies, and then you just click OK and you get in. Now, once you log in, I'm just going to change to another system. So here we go. I've got 2 sessions running with 2 different users. But once you log in, you'll get the SAP client interface. So you'll see on the left side is the menu with all the different modules that are available for yourself as a user. And these will certainly be restricted based on what authorizations you've got. The rest of the area, what SAP calls the cockpit, you can put in various widgets that can help you with your role. Now, what I've got turned on here is the SAP Business One cockpit. I'm running a SQL system. If you're running on HANA, the interface would be slightly different, and you might have some different types of dashboards and widgets available to you. If you don't have the cockpit turned on, then you'll get an interface, let's have a look, similar to this. So this one here, we don't have any widgets. You don't have the ability to enter any widgets onto the cockpit. But what we're going to do is focus on how you'd operate if you did have a SQL system and you were using the cockpit, which is the one we've got here. So with the cockpit enabled, you've got a few different types of widgets that you can put onto your cockpit. There's the common functions ones. If you go through the list from top to bottom, it's common functions, which I've already activated here. And this is where you can put all, bookmark all your favorites, the tasks that you do on a regular basis. You can essentially select that particular module or function and drop it into the common functions area, and then that particular function is now available as a shortcut. And then to open that up, you can just click on that particular option, and that opens up that menu. The other cockpit option you've got is the Open Documents one. Now, probably a lot of you are aware of the report that sits under sales and purchasing under reports. It's called Open Items List. Now, when you run that, you can then open it for the various types of transactions. Now, what the cockpit widget allows you to do is predefine the open documents that you want to see when you log in, or you want to quickly access when you log in. So if you go and click on the spanner or the toolbar there, you can go into the settings, and then from here you can say, yeah, I do want to also see open purchase orders, for example. So I select that, click OK. Now I've got the open purchase orders as part of my list of open documents. I can then click and open up, and this is showing me the open items list for purchase orders. Or if I clicked on the one that says quotes, then I'll see the open items list for quotes. So that's pretty handy if you're wanting to monitor certain types of transactions. And then the final widget that you've got available here is the messages and alerts. So this is where, if you've got if you're receiving messages, you can have those popping up onto the cockpit. Of course, you can always open your messages through the messages and alerts section up the top, and that'll show you the same information. And there is another widget called the browser widget. You can sort of drag that, and if you put that onto the cockpit, then you can go in and go through settings and specify the website you want this to go to as a default. It could be your internal SharePoint site. It could be your, let's say, your company's web page. Whatever you want it to open up. Just gonna close that out. See, in my case, it's opening up the SAP website, and that's what it's doing as a default. So just close that. All right, so the other thing you also see on the cockpit area, whether you've got the cockpit turned on or not, is the search capability. Now, in here you can you've got a couple options. One is you can search menus, or you can search data. So if you were searching the menu system, then you can type, let's say, sales order, and then it finds all the occurrences of that, and then you can quickly access the menu item like that. Or you could be searching for master data or data in general, so master data or transactional data. And so if you go search data, if you were searching for a customer, let's say my customer called MaxiTech, search for Maxi, and I could click on the search button, or if I click and hit enter, it searches, and because there's only one record found, it returns me my customer MaxiTech's master record. I could also, let's say, search for customers that have the word tech in it. If I went in and hit enter, now I can see a list of customers, and then from here, where you see these golden arrows, you'll be very familiar with this. You click on the arrow and you drill in, and you see the actual transaction or actual master record. From here, you can drill in further, let's say into the account balance. From there, you can drill in further and see the reserve invoice or the invoice. So that's how that search works. Of course, you can also search for documents. So if you knew the invoice number, you can type that in and click on search. And now it's, I've just typed in 123, and it's found all occurrences of that. I'm looking for an invoice, so I can go in and drill in there. Now, this search is obviously not as powerful as the one available in the HANA. And some of you may be running BOEM, and BOEM search capabilities are much more powerful as well, in that they can search for other fields within transactions, not just the actual transaction ID or the master data name. Okay, so let's now look at the status bar area. So the status bar is what you've got right at the bottom here. These two lines at the bottom of the client, they're called the status bar, and you can get various information in here. So when you're, say, for example, processing a transaction and you get some sort of an error, the error will pop up at the bottom there. Right. What you also get to see is if you are processing something, you're on a screen and you put your mouse on top of a field, you'll see some extra information about that field. So you'll see I'm on the customer code field. Down here on the first line, it'll show you some other information. So if you note here and back at the top, on the customer code field, it's saying the code takes 15 characters. The next field says name, it's a 100-character field, and so on. What you can also do is if you went into view and system information, and then if you hover your mouse on top of a field, you'll see the next line also showing some information. So the line below, there's 2 lines in the status bar area. So the second line is showing us more information. It's showing some details about what is this form, what is the item, and more importantly, the last set of data, where in this case it's saying ordr.card code, is basically saying that's the table in the database where this form is storing the data, and card code is the field name. So if I went to the next field, you'll see it's saying card name. If I went to the next field down here, it's saying Numet card and so on. So if you were wanting to write some queries, some reports using the query tool inside SAP, this is a very useful tool. Now, the messages that we saw earlier, the error message, in this case was an error message. The messages are also color-coded, red for error, blue for information, and so on. And what happens is these messages disappear, right? I mean, if you've got multiple errors, then those messages disappear. If you want to go back and look at all those messages, what you do is you go into this menu window, and then you go into the system message log. And that it's now popped up an additional window at the bottom in minimized mode. You can then make that bigger, or you can fully maximize it, and now you can see all the different messages. So you've got yellow for warnings, red for errors, and blue for information. So this is quite useful. So if you are sort of trying to do something and you're getting a number of errors and you can't really, they disappear fairly quickly from the status bar, then you open up the system message log, and then you can see all those messages and then decide how you want to handle those messages. So I'm just going to close that now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is the help system inside SAP, how that kind of works. So if you are, there's a couple of things. One is you can, of course, go into this menu here called help. And then from there, you can go and look at the online help. And what that'll do is just open up the complete help for SAP Business One. And then from there, you can navigate and, for example, if I want help about the sales order, then I go into the sales order section and I can see all the information in relation to sales orders. Now, that's one part of it. The other is if you are in a specific screen, say I'm in the invoice screen, and then you can go do help, and you can do this thing called context help or function key F1. What that gives you is help for this particular screen. So, it's now opening up help about the invoice screen. So you can do it via the F1 button or in the action icons. So this section here is the action icons. You'll see there is a shortcut button there as well. You can click on that, and that'll open up the help for this particular field, particular screen, right? So F1 via this shortcut or via the help menu and then context help. So there's a few ways to get to the same thing. Likewise, if you are in a screen and you want to see some help about a particular field, you can also right click on that and then you say, what's this? That'll give you, if there is any help about that field, it will give you that information as well, right? So whether it's on the due date, on the customer reference number, if the field has some help information, that that will appear when you go through the context specific help. All right, so we'll now move on to just how to navigate or open up menus and things like that. So we saw here there's the menu system, and there's a number of different folders. And you expand on a folder, you'll see all the different options within that folder. If you click on the folder header again, it collapses the menu. You can open up a different one. And whilst you've got one open, if you open up another one, then the one that was open will collapse. From here, let's open up one of them. So once you've got the screen open, let's say I'm going to do some order entry. So I click on the sales order option, and that opens up the screen. So what we'll do now is have a look at the screen itself and see how you operate, or how these various screens inside SAP Business One work. So the first thing you'll notice is there is a sort of a header area, which has your customer name, code, some date information, document number, and then you've got a footer area which has remarks, totals, some other bits of information. So, and in the middle here you'll have various other bits of information. So in this case we've got, if I just sort of scroll back one more record, we can see you can enter all your product data that you're trying to put onto an order, and then there's multiple tabs going across. So you got your logistics, which gives you who you're shipping it to, and the address details, and then there's some other logistical information. You've got the accounting, which got financial information, payment terms, some other bits of information, and then you've got the attachments tab, which is where you can attach documentation coming from either your supplier or customer, depending on what type of transaction it is. So what SAP term marketing document, which is any sales or purchasing related documents, will follow the same format, right? They're pretty well going to have this sort of a layout. And then the last thing we've got on the side here is what we call user-defined fields. So user-defined fields are basically additional fields we've created in the system because there isn't a standard field to hold the information we're trying to hold. So Business One, most of you will know that it's fairly easy to create those additional fields, and then we can also apply additional logic, such as formatted searches, to pre-populate the data. If you ever lose your user-defined fields, you can always bring it back. So if instead of clicking X to close the screen here, if I click X there, that will close the user-defined fields. Now, if I want to bring that back, it's pretty straightforward. You go into View, and you go into User-Defined Fields, and that'll open that particular user-defined field panel again. Now, once you're in the screen, there are a number of shortcuts that you should always think about, right? When you are in a sales order screen, you can then right-click, and you get a number of different options, things that you can do with this transaction. So you can cancel, close, duplicate, and so on and so on. There's a number of different things you can do. So the right-click is a very powerful tool. It gives you more options, and you'll notice that I right-clicked on sort of the header area in the gray space. If I go into the footer area and right-click, I'll get some other types of options, right? So now the right-click is, focused more on what you can do at a particular row level. So, for example, and we'll probably I'll quickly run through a couple of important ones that are quite useful. So the first one is this concept of available to promise. So this allows you to see as a user all the open purchase orders, sales orders, maybe production orders relating to this item, and sorted by due date. So when were they supposed to, or are they supposed to be delivered, or when they're supposed to arrive. And that what that in turn gives you is a running balance of stock expected to be on hand at a given date. So very powerful when you're talking to the customer on the phone and they want to know whether you'll have enough stock at a certain date. You can run the available to promise and it'll tell you. You can see, you can also filter this by warehouse, or you can say just show me for all warehouses. So one of the very powerful tools with the right click. The other one that's worth pointing out is the last prices report. So if you ever wanted to go in and say, you're on the phone to the customer, you're putting an order, and the customer's saying, oh, how much is that product? And you say, well, okay, item JB Office Printer 1420 is $661.50 for you. And the customer may say, oh, no, well, I mean, last time I only paid $500 when I bought it from you. Now, how do we check that? How can we confirm that, what did the customer pay the last time? So you've got a right-click function in the price field where you can go in and look at the last prices. So if I clicked on that, now I see a report that shows me the last 10 prices for this particular item for this particular customer. Now I can remove the customer filter, then I'll see the last prices for everyone. I can also filter based on different types of transactions, whether it's an invoice, delivery, orders. I can say, well, actually, show me the last 100 prices, and I can refresh that. And so I can look through that and go, well, the last time you paid $500 for this was back in May, so maybe you've got a point. And that's one way of sort of getting to the information relatively quickly. The other useful one with the right click is looking at the stock. Now, you may know that you can use form settings to make additional fields available on the screen. So here you got this quantity in warehouse. It's saying you've got 1098 in warehouse. Well, how do we know whether that's enough, whether there's other orders in the system? We looked at the available to promise, but what if I just wanted to see a snapshot of what stock is available across all the warehouses? I can go into the warehouse field here. I can right click on that, and then I can say show me the warehouse balance report. Right, now I'm getting a very summary view of the same information. I can see warehouse 01, physically in stock, committed on orders, ordered from suppliers, and by warehouse. So this gives you a sort of a high-level snapshot of the inventory position. Now, what you can also do with the right click is, for example, if you've got an item that is batch tracked, and this item here in my system is a batch tracked item, I can right click on the quantity field, and I can then assign batch serial numbers, whether it's on the sales order or whether it's on the invoice. I can right click and see the information, and I can then do the assignment. Now, a lot of these right click options also have keyboard shortcuts. So for example, the warehouse stock situation, I did a right click and did a warehouse balance. But what I could also do is do a keyboard shortcut Control and Tab. If I do a Control Tab on that field, I get the same information, right? Likewise, if I wanted to assign serial and batch numbers, instead of doing a right click, I can do a Control Tab on this field. Oops, what did I do? Control Tab, and there we go. And now I can see the stock or the batch number allocation for that particular item. The final thing I wanted to look at was the option to do right click and look at the relationship map. I think a lot of you would be familiar with this function, but if you're not, so here, for example, I've got an invoice, and that invoice has, you can see in the narration, it's based on a quote based on an order, based on deliveries and so on. But if I wanted to see a full history of how that sort of transactions come about and what else is in that sort of chain, I can go in, right click and say, show me the relationship map. And I can then now see, this invoice was created from that delivery came from that order and that original quote. And there's another delivery within the same, tree. From here, I can also double click on any one of these and open up that particular option and see the details of it. So very powerful. Right click, you highly encourage you to explore all the different screens and what things you can get out of doing a right click on a screen. There's a lot of different options now. So moving on, what we'll do now is look at the ability to, when you are doing data entry and the ability to do maximize the grid so you can get more information on a screen. So I'm on a sales order, I'm typing a lot of information and I'm running out of space. I want to see more information across the page as well as down the page. I can click on this little icon here and that will maximize the grid. So now I can see more information. I can do, it gives me ability to do data entry while seeing what else I've already entered. And once I've done what I'm needing to do, I can then click on that button again and minimize the grid. Okay, now what we'll do is go into a master data screen rather than a transactional screen. So this sales order is a transactional screen. So what I'll do now is let's open up business partners. So in SAP Business One, business partners are basically your customers, suppliers, and leads. So if I go into the business partner master data, and let's have a look at this screen. So if I look at an existing business partner, you'll see again, you've got kind of head area, and then the rest of the area is just basically various tabs that give you specific information in relation to this particular customer. Now, once we're in here, let's see how you'd search for a customer. So just note one thing, when you open up a master data screen, like business partners or items, the screen will open up in find mode. What that means is it's expecting you to start searching for something. Now, if you open up a transactional screen, example, a sales order, it will open up in add mode. What does it mean? It means now you're wanting to create a new transaction. All right, so they're the two modes a screen can be in. So, in SAP Business One, you don't have a separate screen for finding and adding. It's all in the same. So here on the business partner master, I'm in the find mode. So how do I go searching for things? Now, when you're in the find mode, any field that appears in yellow is a searchable field, right? So if I'm looking for a customer, we earlier looked at, we were searching for that word tech. Now, if I do the same thing here, I can go type tech, and I'm doing a wildcard search. So I've put an asterisk in front of it. I could put another asterisk after that and then, search for some other string. And so it's doing a wildcard search that's searching for word tech and test. Now it's going to get rid of the second bit. So if I'm just searching for the word tech inside customer name or supplier name for that matter, click find and I get a list, right? Now, once you've got the list, and if you're still not sure of which of these records you want to, work with, you can tick on this box that says keep visible. And what that allows you to do is now I'm going to load, let's say, this record, which is parameter technology. I can view that information, and what you'll notice is the actual list is still visible in the background. I say, well, that's not the one I was looking for, so I can close that and go into the next one, and so on. So, but as I said to you, when you're searching, any field that's yellow is searchable. So you could go search for a phone number. You could go and say, well, actually, I want to see all my New Zealand dollar customers. and that gives you that list. And you could even populate multiple fields when you're searching. So if you wanted to see New Zealand customers that have the word technology in it, for example, so you can go star tech and New Zealand dollar and click find. Now, because there was only one record, it returned the record. Now, the other thing to note around the Business One screens is that if you want to move from one field to another, you use the tab button, right? The tab key is what moves you from field to field. If you hit enter, it will execute or click on whatever button is already highlighted. So you can see here at the bottom, the find button has a bit of a shade on it, which means that that's the sort of highlighted button. So if you went in, did star, and then instead of clicking find, you can just hit enter, and that'll open up a list. So just bear in mind that sort of navigation trick. And other thing to note is if you want to switch between find and add, you just click on that icon there, takes you to add mode. If you click on the next one, takes you to find mode. So you switch between the two using these icons. And there is also a keyboard shortcut for doing that, which is Control A to go to add mode, Control F to go into find mode. And we'll show you how to get to your shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, how to know what the various shortcuts are. So that's how you sort of search for records within a master screen, as well as how you can add or update. So when you're already in an existing record, then if you change some information, as soon as you change the information, that bottom button changes from find, or sorry, from OK to update. And then if you want to save it, you click or the update button, or you hit enter, and that sort of saves the changes. Okay, so the same searching applies on the item master screen as well. Anything in yellow is searchable. You'll see header area, and then you see all the different tabs going across the page. What you also find is this action icons section, depending on which screen you are, various of these options will be available or not available, right? If they're not available, they'll be kind of grayed out and you can't really click on it. But if they are available, they'll activate automatically. So see on the item master, you've got different icons that are available. If I went into a sales order screen, then you'll see some other options that become activated. So depending on the screen you're on, different system behavior takes place. So let's just maybe run through these icons and understand what they do. So the first one here is preview. So if you click on that, you'll get a preview of the invoice or the order, or whatever transaction you're looking at. It's going to give you a preview of that particular transaction. If you're on the print icon, then it'll obviously create a print. It send it to the default printer. If you wanted to pick a different printer, you go File, Print, and then it actually gives you an option to select a printer. But if you just hit the print button, it'll just go to the default printer. You can do an email out of the system. You can SMS is not available in the Australian or even the New Zealand or Singapore localizations. You can fax, but I mean, these days, no one really faxes. You can do an export to Excel. If you click on that, it'll launch Excel and, populate the data within Excel. So that's available. But however, you can also just, right-click within the grid, and you can go copy table. And once you've done that, you can open up Excel and just paste the data. So there's a couple of ways of sort of doing your exporting to Excel. You can do the export to Word. You can do a PDF of the document. Launch applications. So if you've got various related applications that you use with SAP Business One, you can define a shortcut to be able to open that particular application from within SAP. So that's what the launch application is for. You can lock the screen, so just like how you can lock your Windows session if you wanted to just lock SAP because someone else is using your PC and you don't want them to access the system, you click on the lock screen. It just basically does a lock, and then you can come back in and put your password and get back in. We've already looked at the find and the add. What you have then is these arrows. These arrows allow you to navigate from record to record. So it takes you to the first record, previous record. So just scrolling between records, going down or backwards, or you can be going forwards. You can go to the last record. What you can also do is those, switching between records, there's also a keyboard shortcut for that. You can use the control and left arrow to move backwards and control and right arrow to move forwards. Okay, so they're keyboard shortcuts for a lot of the different functions that you can do using action icons or right-click functions. Refresh records. So if you've got multiple people working on the same record and you might have got it open and now someone else has changed it. If you want to quickly see what changes were made, you click the refresh button. Filter table, sort table. So, let's say if you've got a report that's opened, let's see if I open up our open items list. Then you can go in and do a filter, and the filtering has got a lot of different options. So you can filter, let's say I'm going to just want to do, let's clear the filter. Let's say I want to do customer name is equal to Ada Technologies. Click on filter and I see that data. Or I can do multiple filters as well. So that's the idea of the filter. Then you've got the ability to sort the data. Now the sorting, you can just double click on a column heading and the data will get sorted. Okay, so that's already fairly easy, but if you wanted to do a secondary sort for whatever reason, you can open up the sort. It shows you what the primary sort is. You can then do a secondary sort, so for example, you might want to sort by customer and then sort by the total amounts within that customer. So that's an option you've got of doing multiple sorts. Now the next couple of icons, so we might just go back into our invoice screen, and if I look at one that's got a base document, so here I can then click on, instead of doing relationship maps, a right-click relationship maps, one way of seeing the links. The other thing you can do is very quickly, without doing the right clicking, you can go show me the base document, and that just opens up the sales order behind it. And if you're on the sales order, you can click on the next icon, which shows you the target document, right? And that shows you the invoice. So some other quick ways of getting to information. And once again, you can do a right click and say show me the target document or the base document. It's also available via right click. Your next one here is the gross profit. So it shows you the GP margin on that transaction. So base price, total price, sales, and the profit and overall profit of the transaction. You've got the weight and volume calculations. So if the items are set up with weights and volumes, then you'll see that information and you'll see an overall volume and an overall weight of the order. These options are available on purchasing transactions as well as sales transactions. Transaction journals, so that's applicable if you're looking at a transaction that will result in a financial transaction. You can click, you can run a report, or you can also do a journal entry. So if you want to see what the journal entry was or what the journal will be, in this case, I'm looking at an invoice that's already been entered. But if this was an invoice that was waiting to be added, I can also see what the output or what the impact of the journal will be. You've got the ability to edit your layouts or assign different default layouts. So, that's through that icon, but I'd recommend that you sort of talk to the system admin before you start changing default layouts. You might affect something. You've got the form settings. So this is a very powerful tool here. This allows you to define what fields and columns are available and visible on a screen and in which order. So if I, for example, the serial number field, don't really want to see that, I can untick that. If I don't, if I want to see the text code, but I want to see the text code right next to the item description, I can drag that. I can drop it next to the item description. Then I click OK, and I can see those changes have been applied. So, each user, if they've got the authorization, can change the form settings for themselves. We've got the query manager. So this is where you can go in and access any queries that have been written in the system for you to be able to rerun. So that's the query area. So in this case, you can see there's the SQL behind it, and then that's the output that it's showing. You've got live collaboration. So this is basically it's a mechanism to allow you to chat to other people that are using SAP Business One in your organization. Right, so anyone else who's logged into the same company, you can go in and say, okay, let's do the live collaboration, and I want to send a message to user Alex. So open up Alex, and I can sort of send him a message saying, hi Alex, can you please check this order? Now, when I say this order, I can then go in and open up an order. And I can go into that next icon there called Send to Conversation. So I click on that. And now it's saying, hi Alex, can you please look at this order? And that's the sales order number. And I click on Send. Now if I've got a second session running here under user Alex. One of the things that will happen is because I've sent him a message, there's a bit of there's a red dot on this icon saying you've got a new message, or there are some unread messages. Okay, you see on my session here, there's no red dot because I don't have any unread messages. Alex has got some unread messages. He clicks on it, and then what he can do is when you look at this here, there's a little flashing icon saying, hey, you've got a message. He clicks on it and he looks at it and he goes, here we go. Hi, Alex, can you please check this order? He's got a link. He can click on that link and that opens up the sales order in SAP. He can review it and then he can provide feedback. I think it looks okay. And so he sent a message back to Jason. If I come back to Jason, there's a message back there saying, hi, it looks okay. So that's the two icons there. Allows you to do instant messaging between users. And also, they get some form of notification that messages come. There's a workflow engine as well. So you can define some workflows. I haven't got anything set up for that. You can look at your messages and alerts. We've seen that. You can view the calendar. So if you got various tasks assigned and reminders and things like that, you'll be able to go into the calendar and you can see those reminders for yourself. What else we got? We've looked at the help. The web client is something new in version 10. I'm going to cover that. There's the cockpit management, which we've kind of looked at. So that's the action icons. So let's now look at these shortcuts that we've been kind of looking at. So as I said earlier, on a screen, right click and you get some shortcuts. Now, if you want to know what the keyboard shortcut is, you could go to this menu option called Go To. And then you can see some of these, right? So you can see if you want to see payment means, it's Control Y. If you want to see the GP report, you can go Control G. Weight and volume, Control W, and so on. So there's quite a few different options here. And likewise, if you went into data, you'll see some options here as well. So you see the Control F for find, Control A for add, next record, Control right click, previous record, Control left click, refresh record, duplicate data. So if you were wanting to duplicate an existing transaction, Control D, and so on. So all of these shortcuts you can find inside the help as well. The other thing is some of these options don't have a direct shortcut, but what you'll notice is that there is a little underline or underscore under the option for that particular shortcut. So for example, opening and closing remarks, there's a little underscore on the letter E in the word opening. Right, so what that means is that if you wanted to get there, right, opening and closing remarks, you can also see that there's under the G in the go to, there's a little underscore. So to get to the opening and closing remarks, you go Alt, G, and then E, right? It's a keyboard shortcut, so Alt, G, E, and that opens up the opening and closing remarks. So there's a few different ways of getting to things. Now let's just quickly open up the help and look at the shortcuts that are available. Okay. So there you go. There's a number of different shortcuts. There's, various shortcuts there. You've got shortcuts here. You've got shortcuts, inventory production, and so on. So there's different ways of, finding out what the shortcuts are for different screens. All right, now the other shortcut we can talk about is the ability to quickly access a menu. So we've looked at doing it through the common functions. You can also access your menu system through modules up the top. So, if I wanted to open up an order, I can do it like that as well. And the other way of doing it is by creating a function key shortcut. So in here under Tools, My Shortcuts, you can define different function keys to do different shortcuts. So in my case, a sales order will open with the key F2, business partners F3. So if I went into customize, I can then go in and say, actually, F8, I want to assign to business partner activities and allocate. Now I see my list. I can see F8 is allocated activities. I can go in and press F8, and it'll open up the screen without me having to, go through the menu. The last thing I'm just going to quickly run through is the process of entering a transaction. So let's go through and do a sales order entry. So as you said before, orders will open in add mode. I can then start typing and go in and sort of find the customer I'm looking for. I'm going to pick Maxitech. And then I can go from one field to another by hitting the tab button. I get to the date field. Now I want to enter the date, and let's say the delivery date for this order needs to be next week on the 20th. Well, I can just type in 20 and hit the tab, right? The rest of the date will get populated by SAP. I don't need to type the full date. It will default it to the current month. Now, if the date was, let's say, the 20th of next month, I can go 2008 and hit tab, and the year will get defaulted. If it was today's date, I can just hit any alpha key. I mean, generally, what we say to people is use T for today. So if I just type T and tab, it will put today's date in. If I wanted to put a date 1 month from now, I can go +1M, and that'll put in a date 1 month from now. If I wanted to put in a date 1 year from now, I can go +1Y, and that'll put a date a year from now. So there's a few different, ways of putting a date in. Now, I've got my dates in. I'm going to go further, tabbing across. Now I'm in the item number field, and start typing the code I'm looking for. I select it and go tab, put the date in. I can go tab. I can check the stock situation. I'm happy with that. I can tab across, or if I wanted to get to the next line, I just go down arrow. Now I'm onto the next line. I don't have to tab all the way across. I can go in and pick another one. Now here as well, when I go pick a list, I can then also select multiple items from this list. Right, I can go control click, or if I go shift and click, I pick all of them and I click choose. And then I can go tab, put the quantity in, down arrow, next line, put the quantity in, down arrow, next line, put the quantity in. I'm ready to add. And again, I didn't need to use the mouse. I could have just hit enter, and that would have added the transaction. So you could almost process the complete transaction with minimal use of mouse. That kind of concludes the training. The last thing I'll just mention is from a searching perspective. We looked at searching on master records. Likewise, if you're searching on transaction data, you go into find mode. Once again, anything that's in yellow is searchable. So you could search for a transaction number, for example. Or if you went back into search mode, if you put a date in, so let's say I put in 0101, start of the year, I'll basically get a listing of all orders in the system since that date forward. Once again, you can put multiple search criteria, and then it'll do a filter based on those. So I guess if you do need any further information, please contact your account manager.